and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duval, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who keeps running around in crowded auditoriums yelling, "It's a cookbook! It's a cookbook!"
Tim Longo. Yeah, I know what that reference is now.
Oddly, having just recorded the intro a second time, you know that the reference is an old Twilight Zone episode, To Serve Man.
Yeah, I do remember it. Yeah, once you mentioned it. Yeah, long time ago, obviously.
The aliens come back, and it's nicely spoofed in from the Files of Police Squad, The Naked Gun.
Oh, okay.
There's a scene towards the end where they're in this dining, might be in the second one, then they're in this big dining room, and there's suddenly this panic because Drebin shoots his gun at the ceiling or something, and all these people are milling about, and like everybody's trying to get to the exits, and there's this guy, and it's actually the same guy, the same actor, 30, 40 years later, running around with this big book going, "It's a cookbook! It's a cookbook!" Classic. Same actor, I forget his name, but good stuff. Anyway.
That's awesome.
I picked an alien-inspired this one because, of course, we are playing XCOM UFO Defense, the original. Well, not the original, but the sort of the time. What
Timeless?
is the word? What is the word I'm looking for here?
I don't know. Timeless classic.
The turn-based strategy game that we all refer to.
Right.
Sorry, I was in my brain got stuck with real time. I'm like, no, it's not real time. Well, part of it is, as we talked about last time.
Such a funny hybrid of that stuff. Yeah.
It really is. I remained very surprised by that, especially with the time management aspect, where you literally have to go and be. When I say time management, I mean clock management of. Advance the clock this fast versus advance the clock this fast. And this second time I found myself advancing more quickly, more often, because I was able to rely on the systems to tell me when something was going to happen that was worth paying attention to, which was something I was afraid of doing last time. But anyway.
Yeah, I found a better equilibrium this time, too. I think I started off slow, and then, as we talked about last time, on my first session, I went too quickly and went through a couple different months, and ultimately ended up failing and losing all my money and such. But you haven't probably failed yet, have you?
I haven't lost a game. No, I haven't had a game over yet. I have failed missions, and then I just reload because I want to have the experience of success for a while. To feel like I'm getting my legs under me before I let myself fail, especially considering this is supposed to be the beginning, the easy beginner's version of the game. It's not super simple, even for a beginner's version, which is something we maybe should talk about at some point, how difficulty levels have changed over time and difficulty level management and that whole thing. That's a huge can of worms that was really starting to become a thing when we started in dev, and I think they hadn't really nailed this early, but maybe a topic for another time.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come up. I mean, this is definitely not
to talk about.
Well, there's no way to lower it from where we are. We're at the bottom. It's like even if you wanted to, there's really there's really no scalability for us at this point. We just have to learn the game as it is and hope for the best. And the failure that I was talking about was just failing the whole game, not just one mission, but where they do turn us into food or whatever they do.
Whatever it is that they're doing. I expect it would be bad, whatever it is.
They have
world domination is on their mind.
Yeah, they have splash screens and little scenes they show you when you fail. And all the humans have turned to mutants, and all the resources of Earth are gone, and it's a barren wasteland, and it's your fault. So I'm glad I experienced it at least that one time. Hopefully it's the last.
I'm sure it will happen to me as well, so I'm not worried about missing that. It reminds me a little bit of TIE Fighter, where I managed to lose the game and you never did. And I saw those little cutscenes of failure. There were different ways you could die. So,
Fallout as well, right? Fallout had a couple different.
Yeah, Fallout also has they've run out of water and things like that. Yeah. You don't get the water.
I mean, I'm definitely getting better. I had a couple good. So I played a few more hours, a little over 3 hours, and I think it sounds like we've already started to diverge when it comes to what we're experiencing.
We have for sure, because last time I described on the cast how I had a couple of UFO encounters, but I couldn't run them down and shoot them down, and then I finally got the third one. And this time out, at the very end of January, so I did that encounter and completed it for last time, and then this time I started off and I was doing the base management tutorial, and we're going to talk a lot about base management in the episode. But then I had a terror attack on Cape Town, South Africa, which is where the aliens specifically target a town, and so you get town tiles more than you get farm and house tiles, which is interesting too. And there's some great things that happened as a result of being in a populated area. There are human beings that, in theory, you need to rescue.
Oh, really?
There isn't a specific mechanic for rescuing them. You just need to keep them alive until the end of.
Does it score you at the end? Because the end,
you lose points for how many die.
Interesting. Are the aliens going after them,
or aliens,
just like collateral damage?
They seem to be more collateral damage. The aliens didn't seem too interested in them, but then again, a lot of what the aliens do is hidden, and I would hear screams and things. So I have to imagine that they were actually finding and killing regular Earthlings as well.
So have you started meeting other aliens as well? I've met a second type.
I have met 4 types.
Oh no!
Yes, it's going a little fast for me.
That sounds terrifying.
It was very terrifying. So I met there's the grays, right? Those are kind of the normal ones that you find probably in your first encounter. The second one I met was a sort of cloak-wearing figure.
Yeah, I think they're called floaters.
I think they do float, yes.
Yeah, their sounds are just super creepy.
And then there's a tank, 4 tile occupying, big 4-legged or 6-legged tank-like beast, which looks, it might be insectoid. It's kind of hard to tell in the graphics of this era.
Oh, man.
And then finally, I found a small flying saucer that also took up 4 tiles.
Oh, wow. So it's like an AI that moves around?
Right. It's more like an autonomous drone or something that has some crazy effects that it can do to your squad. It is dangerous. So anyway, as a result of winning in Cape Town, South Africa kicked in more money at the end of the month because they were so happy with me, and I had more money in the kitty. So I'm running at about 6 or 7 million. I don't know, every month that I get in, and I don't. It's all funny money to me at this point. I really don't have a good sense of what that means, like how much is good.
Yeah.
But I had an okay first month, and they were willing to keep funding me because I had the 2 positive encounters, I guess. So, yeah. Anyway, that's where I am. What did you do for your canonical playthrough? Finally,
the first thing I did was start over because I had 2 different games that I played the last session to just kind of familiarize myself with it, and we know how those turned out. And so I started over, put my base basically kind of on the western side of China, so kind of in the middle of that continent, right around there, trying to get as big a landmass as I can. And I've done, let's see, only 2 ground missions that were both successful, but I definitely lost people. But not as bad as the first ones. Like I think I only lost 3 or so, 4 maybe in a couple of them. But I'm definitely the first mission was fine. It was still farmland, and farmhouses and stuff. But really starting to get the gist of sort of the line of sight and kind of having them cover each other and that dynamic. I think the one thing that I'm glad we have evolved with over time is just being very clear with the sort of usability of the rules of that kind of stuff, because line of sight is definitely not clear enough to me right now what the rules are. For instance, there was a gray on top of a 3-story barn who shot at one of my guys down the stairwell through a window, past a wall. And he was hiding at the edge of the side of the UFO ship, that was landed, and killed my guy. And it was probably across most of the map. So it was so it was like at an angle down through the stairwell. The stairwell angle was such that it went through the window, through a room. I was just like, really? Like, I would have no idea that guy was vulnerable to this guy on top of the ceiling. So he's literally on the roof of the building. That was frustrating. And a little bit of that RNG we talked about last time, right? Where it's like that, that particular plasma bolt happened to hit, and there's nothing I could do about it. So I'm trying to furiously research armor now because I want my guys to stay alive longer than one hit. But yeah, so it's just been fun. I've had a couple good turns where I've killed, two aliens, 2 of those floaters in one turn, and those feel really gratifying because I feel like I've set up, all my guys into crossfire positions, and they're covering each other, and their backs are to wall, or they're in cover themselves, and then if they move into range, or they don't move out of my line of sight, then I take them out the next turn. So that's been fun. Oh, and then I had you've probably done this already too, but I had a great basically excursion inside of, or infiltration inside of one of their UFOs itself on the second one, which I hadn't done yet. And kind of just, it's not that big inside of those UFOs, but it is pretty terrifying to kind of go in and try to figure out where they are in their own ship. And there were like 4 other floaters just in the ship.
Oh, my goodness.
So there was 8 total in that one mission. Which I was, used to 4 up to that point. So that surprised me. But it was fun. It was, it's just a really terrifying game.
It really
I think the combination of the high lethality and the unclear rules, maybe.
Well, it's not even the rules, I think, being unclear that makes me terrified. It's the hidden movement.
Hidden movement's great, yeah.
Yeah, so
the audio in the hidden movement is hilarious.
Is very good, and actually that's when I will hear screams or explosions or what have you,
or doors opening or closing.
Doors opening and closing is another good one, or footsteps. And you're wondering, are they really close to me and they're getting a beat on me, or suddenly just a bolt will fly out of nowhere and hit and kill a guy. Yeah. And so there's this constant. I can sense them moving often. Or I can sense the results of them moving or shooting, but I still don't know where they are. Now, I've gotten further into the game, and now I have motion scanners, so I actually have a much better sense.
Yeah, I just finished that too, but I haven't used it yet.
You can equip it and then use it, and it gives you a rough idea of where things are. It claims. Okay. So, but one thing I think it may also do is it may either give you false positives or still report dead ones. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Is it a weapon? You have to equip it like a weapon, so you can't use a weapon?
You can put it in your left hand. No, you can put it in your left hand instead of your right hand. So usually I give it to guys with pistols.
Okay, right.
So I don't know if the rifle's a one-handed weapon or not. And I've started researching laser rifles and things, so I'm trying to push forward on the research as much as I can. What's interesting to me, though, is you said earlier that you are researching armor, and that has not come up for me yet.
Well, so I think I am. I'm not sure. I'm guessing because I haven't finished the research yet. But I'm researching alien alloy, which and that's a total guess. What I meant by furiously researching is I'm furiously searching for what I need to do to get the armor.
Okay. So you're trying to discover the tech tree. Basically.
Yeah. And there's some other, obviously with the artifacts you get various things. I've also gotten this alien element that's not of this planet. That I forget the name of it. It's like something in the 3-digit number. I don't recognize it. I don't think it's one of our...
Cryptosporidium 183.
Yeah, right.
Do you know what that's a reference to?
That is familiar, but I can't remember. What is it? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
It's from Destroy All Humans. Another alien game.
Yeah,
another alien game that I actually played this summer.
Oh, funny. How ironic.
I don't think his number is actually 183. It might be 153. I can't remember. But
it's something like that. Yeah.
Right.
Anyway, I haven't researched that yet, but and then some of this tech you'll actually be able to upgrade your ships with. So the alloy might not be armor; it might be like ship plating or something. And I'm like, oh man, all the stuff you can do with your interceptors, and then there's also a bunch of different types of ships. Like this game is huge.
It really is.
The UFOpedia or whatever it's called, and man, there's a lot of stuff in there. And I haven't even found everything. There's alien autopsies eventually.
Right. If you have an alien containment unit or something like that, so you have to build squares in the base to house an alien so you can capture them alive. I actually had the opportunity to capture one alive in Cape Town, but at the end of the mission said, "Oh, you don't have an alien containment facility, so you can't."
So what was the opportunity? How did it come about?
I think it was disabled but not killed.
Oh, you didn't. I see. Yeah, because that can happen to your people as well, right?
It can. Yes, and it has happened. I've currently got a wounded sergeant, and I'm trying to figure out how to get that sergeant back. I need that sergeant back. Anybody who has experience in the field, I need those guys back.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm researching med kits right now, so I'm hoping that will be the solution. But or maybe it's just time. I don't know. And then I also read. I mean, we can talk a little bit about the base management. I know neither of us have gotten too far into it, but for instance, the radar dishes, the small and large radar dishes, they apparently the way the calculations work is they turn at a certain interval, speed. And they cover a certain percentage. So if you only have one radar dish, you're not going to get the coverage you want because it takes too long to make its full rotation.
And so
so they suggest you have multiple radar units in each base. And so I started a second one of those. I couldn't afford the large one, but I started a second small. So I don't know if that makes a difference. Yeah, but that's the only base stuff I've really done other than research. I've done a lot of recruitment because I ran out of scientists and of course I lost a lot of soldiers. So I've been spending a lot of my money on just recruitment, and I actually tapped out my crew quarters.
Yes.
So I need to build more of those, I guess, too. But I wanted more scientists to do research faster.
Yeah, the base management game is pretty involved, way more involved than I guess I expected. It actually has the sort of feel of an RPG in terms of inventory management with basically a backpack full of space that you can fill up, right? You have tiles that you can fill up, and there are 3 that. Well, there are something like 7 or 8 that are already filled when you start, but 3 are hangars, and those are huge. And there's maybe 4 in the middle, which are things like living quarters, as you mentioned, labs for your scientists, storage space.
I think engineering or something.
And an engineering, and then there must be a radar dish in there somewhere, since I didn't place one.
And a lift as well.
That's a crazy amount of stuff. And of course, you have to put in all these squares. And I'm wondering, because there's that button to reclaim stuff or scrap stuff, I'm wondering if you have to go in and scrap that small radar dish to put in the large one in the same spot and basically upgrade your facility sort of directly in place.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. I also did a fair amount of recruitment of scientists. I think I got 5. You start with 10. I think I got 5 more. I've definitely recruited more soldiers, and I started building a tank.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I read up on that.
I built the tank, and then it said also build the rockets, but I'm having problems. I would really like to have that tank, because I'm having such a hard time in Rome, which is where my second terror mission has occurred, and I'm getting overwhelmed pretty quickly because I'm seeing those 4 different types of enemies. I'm not actually seeing any grays. I'm only seeing the floaters and this UFO-looking thing and these big, brutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just getting slaughtered. I mean, I had a hard enough time with Cape Town. I think I lost half my squad, maybe more. But Rome has just been kicking my butt as I try to deal with all that stuff. And I really would like to have the tank, especially to take out this new enemy that I don't even know if I'm damaging. I haven't destroyed it yet, so it's I'll be going back to that.
Yeah, I was about to say it's interesting that they don't educate you more on the different kinds of things you're going to find. Like we've talked about this in manuals of this era, right? With especially the Nintendo products that actually just kind of reveal everything you're going to find in the manual. But
very common in Ultimate games as well.
Yeah, but then I was kind of thinking one of the core tenets of this game is this research loop, which is pretty critical to, I think, its identity, I'd say. And then they have the UFOpedia. Is that the name of it?
It is, yes.
So it kind of just dawned on me as I was about to say that is that they actually probably don't want to tell you stuff because the researching, I assume, will reveal, once you take one of those things out, which is a little trial and error and trial by fire and all that. So, but once you take one out, I guess, I assume, you'll be able to research or you'll know more about it. And then maybe that will educate you on it. But, the fact that you don't know if you're damaging it at all is interesting and seems a little unfair, but maybe not.
At the very end of the tutorial section in the manual, it says, that's basically all we're going to tell you. And because half the fun of the game is discovering stuff, so get out there and make sure you research stuff and try to research things in a way that they'll give you lots of benefit for not a lot of money. I mean, it gives you some guidelines, but it really doesn't tell you a lot of that stuff. And when you encounter a new thing, you don't get like a pop-up or something that says, oh, new enemy encountered. You just see it and go, oh, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah.
And you wonder at that point, am I doing any damage at all?
Which makes it even more terrifying. It's like, what else is out there? I had an exchange on Twitter when I sent a picture of the floater out there, and and I was like, man, this guy's terrifying, and had a response of just like, yeah, you haven't seen anything yet. There's this other thing that I can't remember the name of that is the most terrifying, and I think it's probably late game, or maybe you've met it. I don't know, but I've heard legend, of this other thing. It starts with a C. It's like a cryptid or something, chrysalis or something. I mean, the escalation. I mean, when you look at just at the weapon list, right, and all the things that we know about that you can research and engineer and manufacture yourself, like rocket launchers and like a bunch of different types of stuff for different uses. And if they're in there, I'm sure they're effective against different things, and 6 hours in, it's still only scratching the surface, although I did start over, but yeah.
Right. And we'll be having to be more careful about our layout of people and maybe sending out little groups of 3 soldiers so that you have coverage of different weapons, or maybe equipping them with different weapons. I mean,
yeah, I've tried fooling with some of that,
and taking the time to switch things out, which costs time units, and those are precious. And so, and they are also not, as far as I can tell, saved. So if you don't use them all, they're gone. You don't get to carry them over like California vacation days. You got to use them or lose them.
Yeah, no, they don't seem to. I also noticed. I think I have this right, but the heavy cannon. If you have anybody with a heavy cannon, they don't. Their time unit bar is not full each turn. It actually starts at a deficit because I assume because you're carrying the heavy cannon or something.
Yes.
And then there's energy, which the manual does describe a little bit. If you're walking through tall grass, it takes more energy.
That's why. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I sought that one out specifically.
I had a character who kept running out, and I was wondering. It may be that they're wounded as well. In fact, that was probably my wounded sergeant. He may have taken a hit and then would have less energy to move around. So that makes a certain amount of sense. I assume those are basically parallel unless special conditions apply, such as movement rates or injury. So,
yeah, I've had both happen where I run out of energy and of course time units. But
time units.
I couldn't figure out the energy thing, but at least that's one of them. Maybe weight is another one. Like I don't know, maybe I'll have to keep an eye out, but maybe the heavy cannon person, loses more energy than others because he's carrying that. But there's a lot to manage. I mean, just the stats, I tried to, just if you look at each soldier and you look at all the different stat bars they have with morale and energy and time units, and then there's strength and endurance, and there's a couple that are equivalent to like agility or what have you, or aiming. It's just a lot to keep track of. I mean, this is a deep management game. I mean, I'm glad we're playing it because it's the most, it's the most sim that we've played so far.
Oh, absolutely.
Into the minutia, which is cool. And I'm actually enjoying myself a lot more than I thought I was going to, because like I said before, last episode, my memory of this game was just frustration and failure, I posted
but now that you've been through that with Super Mario World, you're used to that.
Yeah, right. Back to back. Probably a good idea. It gets us all primed up for some more
the groove
disappointment. Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah. So I noticed that you can save mid-ground mission if you go to the question mark menu, which is, I guess, the options menu, but I don't know how you would load that mission. I tried saving mid-mission, but I haven't tried going back to load. You'd have to go all the way back to the main menu to do it. Which seems weird.
Right, when you're in the mission. When
you're in the mission.
Oh, you can't.
There is a save button.
I have not found that. I didn't know that. So that's interesting.
The question mark button has like speed of scrolling, screen scrolling, speed of movement, speed of shots. I think it's just, it doesn't change the sim. It's just, just literally speed, if you want to speed things up. But, anyway, there's a save in there, and I thought that was odd. So
I will probably speed up the sim a little bit, just because as much as the waiting builds tension, too much of it starts to be a little bit much.
Right. If you've met a lot of enemies, yeah.
Right. Turn after turn, you're spending a fair amount of time just. you have a good sense of where they are. You're making your way there, and now they're walking back and forth in that space. I mean, the AI for the enemies is not particularly strong.
Mm-hmm.
They don't do a lot until they're engaged with you, which makes sense. You don't need to spend the cycles on it if you can't even see them. They're more taking shots of opportunity, which is a purely mathematical thing. They're not really positioning themselves, and that's probably a fairness thing, because the smart thing to do would be get to the highest point you can while you're not seen.
Yeah.
And since we're at a disadvantage even finding them, we'd be fighting that battle again and again and again. It would not be fun or fair, or feel fair.
I wonder if there's anything in the difficulty that changes some of that behavior or not.
That's a good question. I think definitely the difficulty impacts. It probably impacts lethality, so it's even higher, and I think it impacts the prices of things when you buy them to equip them, because I'm pretty sure it mentioned a number in the tutorial, and mine was like half that. So I was kind of surprised, why is that so low? But it would make sense to allow people to equip themselves better in the beginner's level, because that's a purely a numbers game that improves your effectiveness without having to level the AI in different ways, which is something I think, particularly in this era, would be appreciated and chosen by designers, just because there's less to have to worry about. The Gollops basically designed and programmed this game, Julian and Nick, alone. I mean, they did all the programming. They had a few artists, I think.
Yeah, the credits are very small.
It's like 7 people, 6, 7, 8 people that made this game. Like 1 music person, 1 sound person, 3 artists, and the Gollops. So whatever that adds up to. And yes, that's a remarkably small number of people, although probably somewhat large for the time. I mean, it was getting to be that time where we were moving from 1 or 2 people to bigger teams, although we're still under 10 here. So,
yeah, I mean, you can tell. Yeah, I mean, it's the hybrid side of it has been surprising to me, especially with the The air combat, like there's a couple aspects like that where it's really cool, of course, for sure. But I guess I'm just surprised at how much is going. And then the other thing is the finances side, where literally there's this jockeying of kind of your status to get, funding from the different countries, and what you do, as you said with your example, impacts what you're going to get each month, and they definitely don't hold your hand on that stuff either. The balancing of this game must have been, very, very difficult when it comes to all of the different statistical aspects of it in the back end, behind the scenes.
It was funny to me that they had at least 4 QA people for a team of 8.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Oh man, a nightmare to QA this game. Holy crap. Yeah.
Because of course you're getting better, right? I mean, there's huge issues with things like that. And QA, one of the problems that you have with QA in a project that goes on for a while is that QA is way better than the developers are at the game by the end. For one thing, that we talked to Reed Knight and
Darren
Johnson, and they were talking about that, about how great they were at TIE Fighter by the end of TIE Fighter, to the point where Darren could kill Darth Vader, which still blows my mind. And that's and already the development team has a hard time because they're already pretty good at the game and can't really tell what's going on in terms of balancing. I think that's why the beginner's level, the easiest possible level of this game, is already super hard.
Yeah, definitely. I would definitely guess that to be the case. I bet you there's some mods out there that maybe modify some of that stuff if we'd looked hard enough, but I wouldn't want to for this. But but it's the good thing with attention. I mean, breaking through the barrier of fear and frustration that I've been trying to with these first 2 sessions. And we've talked about this a lot. Probably 10 times by now, but just that gratification you get once you break through that, and this genre being so different than anything we've played other than, say, combat in Fallout or something, there really is like I said, when I had that one turn where I had set all my guys up in crossfire formations, covering kind of all of the fans of their view, and then killing two of them in one turn felt so good, yes. And it's such a simple thing, and and it doesn't, it's an old school pixel game, so it doesn't look great. Like there's not a lot going on, but man, I haven't felt that kind of gratification around tactical gameplay in a long time.
Right, and I think you mentioned Fallout, and certainly tactical RPGs. I feel like they don't often have the same kind of gratification because everything happens much more quickly. You're already close to the enemies. You know who the enemies are. You're right there. And you can sort of act immediately. And I think that this extra step of formulating a plan and executing on that plan, which is all internal and is not supported at all in-game. There's no formations. There's no support for things that might make that path easier for you. So you're also improvising as you execute it because you might run out of time units on one character and you forgot, they don't have enough, whatever. But as you cross over that hump of stuff that you need to know and understand, and then execute on it over multiple turns, it's wonderful. Mm-hmm. It's like pinning someone in chess, and which is where you've attacked a piece and they can't move that piece because moving it would expose their king. So now that piece is yours for the taking when you want it, because they have to move the king out of the way or whatever. Or a fork. There are these different sort of chess things that you can do. A fork is where I've managed to put a piece in a place where it's simultaneously attacking two pieces. So I'm going to take one of them. You can pick which one you want to keep. Yeah. So you're getting to these points where you've understood the rules of how things move around, but now you're getting to a next level up where you're getting structures appearing out of how you play. And that's a very satisfying thing to have happen, especially when it's not directly taught. It just comes out of those low-level mechanics and how you use them.
Yeah, I mean, it's taught by trial by error, right? I mean, right. Like you going through early sessions.
I've lost a lot of chess in my day.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've lost a lot of soldiers, and including my very first one, and sort of like there's that sort of slap on the hand, back of the hand where you're like, nope, you better pay attention of what's going on, because you're not going to make it through this if you're not careful. I think another element I'm trying to think of, kind of just as one comparison with combat in Fallout, say, they definitely had some amount of fog of war in Fallout and kind of a sense of location of enemies, but it really was a lot more forgiving. I feel like one of the things that makes this one more gratifying to me is that sense of mystery and fear, because you don't know where they are, and they do, and in very, very seldom do you keep a beat on one for very long, even when you do see one, at least for me so far, unless I've really got my guys in a good spot. And so when they either come into your view and you get an opportunity fire, or you surround one, it's really, it's hard to do, and very mysterious. And like I said, I went into that UFO and there were like 4 other ones in there. And that kind of dawned on me why the hidden movement, turns were so long. Because I was like, well, there's only one guy left. Why is this taking so long? I was like, no, there's not one guy left. Mm-hmm. And they were all in the bridge room for some reason. Like they were, I don't know, trying to take off.
Withdrawn as far as they could. Yes.
Yeah, that's probably like some variable they have set up. Like when the chips are down, I'll retreat to that room or something. It'll be interesting to see if there's a pattern there.
I had that happen as well. I lost a lot of soldiers in one failed mission that I reloaded previous to last time, where I had gone into the ship. I think actually this time, so I told you last time that there was radiation or something. I think it's actually supposed to be fire, because one of the things that happened in the cities is that there are these big gas stations. And so you'll hear an explosion off screen, and it'll turn out that they shot maybe at you or maybe at a citizen, and they hit a gas pump, and the gas pump explodes.
Whoa.
And not only does it explode, do a ton of damage to anything nearby, which is how I killed my first brute, it also starts spreading, and it just keeps spreading a little bit every turn. There's more fire, which is just wild. It's
crazy that it has that stuff.
It's so good. Yes, fire propagation mechanics. In what year was this? I forget.
Yeah,
but a long time ago. And I mean, it's pretty remarkable stuff. How much is squeezed into this game?
Well, and the other thing I really keep trying to push myself to dabble with is with the grenades. Is I feel like they're gonna be a pretty powerful element for us against some of this stuff. And the one grenade that I did have go off that I talked about last time in an accidental way, took out a big portion of that building. And now that I think about it, there was fire there as well, because there was this persistent effect afterwards.
Right. It's probably that wavy persistent effect.
Yeah. Pixely. Yeah. Or maybe it was intended to be smoke or something, because there's smoke grenades as well, which you can use. And they say, smoke grenades are great for covering your movement, but, the enemy also uses smoke. So be careful, because you can't see them either. So it's like a double-edged sword there. But then the reason I actually decided not to throw a grenade into that, because I was like, okay, there's 4 of them and they're perfect. I'm going to throw a grenade in there and take them all out. It's going to be great. But then I realized, I think I remember reading or hearing, or somebody told me that, you won't get to recover their bodies or their artifacts if you destroy them like that. And I wanted to, harvest equipment and alien tech. So I decided not to, but maybe there's some enemies like that flying saucer and stuff that you really need to use some big explosives on or something.
Yes. That's why I wanted to bring my tank to bear. And next time I am going to spend the time and just figure out why that's not working, and maybe move ahead from my prior save so that I can try to get that doing. I did a lot of research immediately after a save, and then had this Rome terror attack happen. I was like, and now I know about those radar dishes too. I feel like I should build one of those as well to cover more of the globe and maybe have more. I think I'd like to have more straight up ground attacks on grounded UFOs.
Yeah.
to buff myself up a bit, because those aren't often as highly populated with difficult aliens. So it's really interesting. At some point we'll have to talk about how they're determining to increase the types of critters you're fighting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if that is purely month to month, or how is that triggered? It's very curious to me. And
or based on what you've researched maybe, and what tech where kind of an unspoken tech tree that you are developing. So there's kind of a balancing mechanic going on there.
Yes, that's possible. All of that is possible.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised the Terror. That was your second mission or your third? You said the Terror mission.
My second and my third. My second.
Yeah, it feels
very soon.
Very escalated for you
in the first month. It was quite a surprise.
Yeah.
So, anyway, what's not a surprise is that we've talked for 40 minutes about this game, and should probably take a quick break.
All right, let's do that.
Welcome back from the break. We've been discussing some XCOM UFO Defense. Now we're going to defend our reputations and answer some email. Actually, nobody's accusing of us anything, but I had to segue somehow to getting into the email. I gave you the first one, sir.
Okay. So this one is titled Tutorials from John York. Hello, chaps. First, and thank you for doing such a wonderful job. Thank you for doing such a wonderful job on the podcast. I particularly enjoyed the last two games, Half-Life and Super Mario World. Having played these games extensively in my youth, hearing you guys dissect and analyze these masterpieces honestly makes my heart sing. Thank you, sir. We had a good time. Next, he says, on to business. I'm an iOS developer here in the UK, and the team and I are currently working on a relatively high-budget mobile game. It's a simulation strategy game where the player takes on the role of a professional. Think game dev story, but for another industry. The reason for my email being that we've recently started doing the tutorial for the game, and, being totally honest, we completely underestimated the task. The basic structure is that messages appear over the top of the game and guide the user with instructions and feedback. We've made the task hard for ourselves by attempting to not touch the original working files by injecting this onboarding layer purely over the top. Hooking into the specific events has been harder than we anticipated and has really tested us technically. I was wondering if you guys have any experience or any anecdotes to share on this topic. It is just hard for us. Is it just hard for us because of the native mobile frameworks, or is it the same for the engines you guys typically work in? A good example from the past I could think of was from the original Halo, where in the tutorial you're asked to look up to calibrate your suit, when actually it's hooking into a setting variable for inverting the y-axis. This is a good example of an in-engine action touching something that would otherwise be completely separate, but presumably a bridge had to be built. Question mark. Can you shed any light on this topic? Keep up the good work. Listening to your podcast on my way to work is one of the highlights of my week. Yours, John York.
Tutorials. It's funny because most of the games we play haven't really had tutorials because they're old.
Yeah.
And that is an art that gets better with time. Halo, that example from Halo is a particularly good one, and I remember that being one thing that numerous people in the industry went and bopped themselves on the forehead and said, "Oh man, I wish I had thought of that because it was so brilliant. Just look up.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I'm up here," and whatever they did, just key into that. It's hard to say without knowing much about the code that you're actually using. You say mobile frameworks, but that doesn't mean a lot to me necessarily. Usually I think you're doing it at least the right way in that you're trying to do your tutorial last when you actually know the game you've built. I think that we did that on Republic Commando for sure.
Yeah.
And that was helpful. I think that's when we learned that lesson, because I know on Starfighter we did not do it last. And I think that that hurt us. I think we also made it way too difficult. Oh, hey, you're in this flight action game. You're just learning to fly. Hey, now fly down these narrow canyons.
Yeah.
So I think we made a bit of a mistake there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you always have to hook into things, at least to know that the player's done the thing that you've asked them to. Now, there may be ways to do that and pass the information on. For example, say you're asking them to click a button. Well, on a mobile device, you can know where they click just by intercepting that event and saying, oh, it's in this box. That means they hit the right thing that I wanted them to hit, and now I can advance through tutorial. But yeah, I think in general you need to build yourself some hooks in order to change and respond to actions that the player takes, and know that they're learning what you want them to learn.
Yeah, I think the other hard thing for me to answer this question in terms of the context he gave us for what he's working on is I've generally only worked on linear games, at least in the beginning of the game, where the opening is fairly linear. And so when it comes to scripting that stuff and kind of framing it back into the game after you're, when later in production, when you're ready to go to the tutorial, there's there's more of an understanding of the beginning, middle, and end of that sequence, so you can really structure it better. And either working proprietary engines or in Unreal, there's plenty of scripting opportunities there for the designers to get in there and make that work. Designers and artists. I guess the only, and I don't know if I have any great anecdotes. I think we did a bad job in Starfighter because it was just not on the radar, right? No pun intended. Right. We did a little bit better thinking about that because of those lessons on Jedi Starfighter. I think we thought we were doing a better job in Republic Commando by leaving it to the end, though I don't think that tutorial was good. And I think the reason the Halo example comes up all the time is, and the trend that we started seeing in a very positive way, and everyone should always keep in mind, and I can't speak for a sim type game like he's talking about, because there's definitely a whole different set of problems, I would assume, there for tutorialization. But the Halo example is, and we talk about it at work all the time, obviously, it's integrating that stuff into the game in a natural and unassuming way, where they don't realize they're being taught. That's the key. That's what you really want. And with a sim game, it's probably near impossible to do that. But I wouldn't know. But for a linear kind of game with some semblance of a story, it's a little bit, you can at least try, because it's set up in that way. I think Half-Life that we played, is another good example where some aspects of it, they had a separate tutorial, but they didn't do a lot of tutorialization while you're playing the opening of the game. It just was naturally iterated on. And I guess the only thing that John has already revealed to the listeners is, don't underestimate it. I mean, I think if I had one thing to say about tutorials in my experience and talking to friends and other industry, folks, is that's exactly what happens every time. Everyone underestimates it. No one leaves enough time to iterate on it. The key is that you're going to need a lot of time. Like, yeah, it might be difficult, but also you're going to need to change it and fail at it a bunch of times to get it, perfect. And that takes a lot more time. And nobody allots that time. Right.
One of the things I was going to point out is that in a lot of indie games I've seen, especially ones that are like single screen level based, for example, they introduce mechanics one at a time across multiple screens.
Mm-hmm, yeah, take their time with it, yeah.
And they just take plenty of time, and you're learning, oh, I can jump over walls of this height, but I can't jump over walls of this height. Oh, I need to push boxes, etc. And you kind of, you have a very natural progression, again, because it's linear, as you pointed out, but also they just take their time and show you a mechanic at a time, and might do that later on as well. In a sim game, the only thing I could really recommend would to be have short levels and then add more of your simulation in.
Yeah, I was just going to say this. Yeah, same thing in that. Yeah.
So if you have if you're managing a business, as it sounds like it is, as it says game dev story, have a business with one person who only can have one job, and then have a business with a person who can have two jobs, or whatever makes sense, right? And just have short little levels so that they can understand, oh, this is how I pick the job for the person, and this is how I, whatever, direct them to do a thing. And they're not managing a whole bunch of information and charts and graphs and things that they don't have any context for yet. This will definitely add more time again, but it would give you the opportunity to isolate individual mechanics and then start layering them on top of one another in a way that might be easy for the player to understand. And you can treat that as a totally separate mode if you have people who will understand your game from the get-go. Like Half-Life did, I skipped the tutorials. They are separate. They're not required. And
I don't think they were needed.
That option. No,
I did play the tutorials.
Certainly I felt they were unnecessary. Yeah.
Yeah, and to your point about your indie example, having just played Super Mario World for the podcast, they did some similar things there, right? Where they would introduce mechanics over time, over a long, long period of time, which was good. Yeah, I agree with what you were saying, Brett, because I was going to say a similar thing in that one of the things that happens is we underestimate the amount of time to do them. The other thing that can happen is we don't plan for them, or we plan for them up front thinking that we know everything about the game. So Brett already kind of mentioned that, and we talked about kind of that experience. So we improved on, say, Republic Commando, or maybe some of the stuff we thought through with Tomb Raider. But then the other thing that I think is underestimated often, as Brett was saying, is essentially allowing enough time and giving yourself permission to make custom content for the tutorial. What I think often happens, especially in story games, is that people, devs will just take their first level and make it the tutorial because it's the first level of the game and because the story started there. But you gotta allot time to go back and reverse engineer that level or create some other kind of appropriate entrance to the game that really works,
Yes, System Shock 2 did that particularly well. They found an in-fiction way to do it. It's a game we played last year, right? But you go and you have all the basic training to become one of the 3 fields that you're going to go do, and then you can go try those as well, where you get the sort of particulars of those different opportunities. And it does kind of mess with the story because the story doesn't get to start with a bang.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have a big dramatic moment. For example, one of the things about Republic Commando, starting with our first level, is there's a lot going on. We want it to feel very intense. You're in the middle of a war zone on Bug Planet X, Geonosis. And I know, I'm terrible with the lore. And there's all this stuff going on, and we had to artificially restrict what the player would be experiencing in order to present things. And I do think it's okay. It's not the best tutorial I've ever played, but it does circumvent the problem of, I've got no dramatic oomph at the beginning of my story because I'm doing something kind of bland as in System Shock.
That's the conundrum, right?
Those are the trade-offs that are really, really hard to make. And in a sim game, the only thing I can really think to do would be to layer on your mechanics as slowly as you can manage to do, even if that means lots of short levels up the start. Because sim games often don't have a deep story, so because they're so procedural. But
I don't know if that helps or if there are any anecdotes in there. But good luck. That's a really hard thing, and you're not alone in the underestimation of it, for sure.
Absolutely, and just be thankful that even that you'll learn a lot of lessons this time out, and then you'll have to learn a whole bunch of new ones next time.
You never stop.
You never stop learning about.
You're gonna mess it up. You're gonna mess something up every time. It just happens. That's just the creative process. Yeah.
All right, I've got another email that's more of a just sort of short anecdote and some personal history with the UFO Defense. It's from Charles F. George, if that is his real name. It sounds like 2 of his real names. He says, "Hey guys, love the pod, and I'm really excited you moved to XCOM. The 2012 iteration of XCOM is one of my favorite games of all time. I'll spare you the story of the miracle sniper shot that saved my classic Iron Man. Iron Man mode meant no save reloading when your favorite soldier dies.
Oh,
game.
Yeah, wow.
Even though it's totally great. I enjoyed it so much that I went back and played the original UFO Defense and loved that too. I enjoyed that game so much, as the game we're playing, that it inspired an essay on how failure is more fun than success in it. That essay was part of my application to the MFA game design program at NYU, and I credit it in part for my acceptance to the program and current career making games.
That's awesome. Anywho,
great podcast. I'm looking forward to hearing Tim break down as a cannon fodder rookie accidentally shoots his best soldier in the back.
Oh, it's almost happened already a couple times. Where it's like
I have done that. I've done that too. I don't have any veteran soldiers yet, but definitely I have accidentally shot people, and that was funny.
I'm gonna have to wrestle with that problem too down the road, as far as like how strict am I going to be with myself when I lose somebody. You know what I mean? Because so far I haven't cared. Like I've actually lost a sergeant and I didn't reload, so. I'm going to try to stick with that, but maybe that will bite me.
Yeah, I thought that was a great story. I love that somebody fell in love with the game, played the original thing, and then wrote a bunch of stuff, and that got him into a program, and now he's making games for it. How great is that?
Great success story.
There are many roads to game development, and Charles, thank you for sharing yours.
Well, we talked about that last time some too, that this game in particular, I feel like anyone who's played it has a story like that, right? That his sniper story, or sniper shot story that he mentioned.
Yes, for sure.
And he was talking about the reboot or what have you, but this combination of systems and mechanics, and as far as like, you know, turn-based tactics, like just and the RNG that's kind of peppered in there, just makes some dramatic, awesome stories of both success and just defeat. You know, where you're just. And there's going to be I'm going to break. I can guarantee you there's going to be a breaking point where something's going to happen. I'm super scared of the terror missions. I haven't done one of those yet. I'm like, what? There's a brute and there's pedestrians? Like, I don't know. I don't want to do that. Come on. XCOM. Yeah, anyway.
All right, let's turn and try to catch up on some more reviews. I gave you a couple that are short.
Yes. Okay, so here we go. First one. Title is Takes Forever for Wednesday to Come Around Now. That's nice. By Minotaurant. That's really clever. I love it. Hey, Tim. Isn't it funny how you begrudgingly finally played Final Fantasy IX, and even though it was rough, you somehow brought a whole generation of gamers to this wonderful podcast? Brett, way to stay after him for 16 years. Great work, Kupo.
Kupo!
That's great.
Yes, thank you, Minotaurant. That's
awesome.
Minotaurant.
Yeah, it's a good name.
That's a pretty good one. I like that. I like that a lot. And then I gave you another one I thought I'd have you read right after.
Sea of Peanut Butter by nickname _ placeholder, if that is your real name. Sea of Peanut Butter is a series of questions and one comment. Do you like video games? Do you like podcasts? Do you like podcasts about video games? You should check these guys out. Very good.
I wanted to call this one out because I'm pretty sure we've read an email from Aaron on the program. I think he referred to this peanut butter review in his email, and we read that online.
So you put two and two together.
I did. Also, he put two and two together, shekels, I suppose, and bought us each some old games on GOG that we will have news in the future that we may play one of them coming up. Maybe not the next game, but the game after that. We're just going to tease that for you, Aaron. You're the only one who knows. You've got a 1 in 3 chance of guessing what that game will be. So we appreciate it.
Very appreciative.
It's very nice. Targeted. Yes, that's his thanks, and I'm specifically giving him info on our future podcasts as a result. So
yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron. Very nice.
All right, this one is a funny review because I'm going to read it, and you'll find the subject amusing. It's from Ducky Shirt, if that is your real name. To be read in the voice of Tim Longo.
Oh, no.
Ah, geez. This is just the best darn podcast about games, period. Ah, geez. I know what you're thinking, but those other hyped-up popular ad-drenched pods are for sheeple. Ah, geez. Look, I don't want to throw shade, but this little pod that could deserves that coveted #1 ranking in all of Castum. Aw, geez. Want real game devs talking about real games for real people and getting down and dirty in real interviews and with real legends? Then listen to Dev Game Club, folks. Aw, geez.
And then, of course, the dog starts barking. So
of course, there's the dog.
Couldn't be more perfect. Oh,
so there you go. There it is.
Oh, yes, that one came out naturally.
That's the most I've ever said. Oh, geez, I think in one particular podcast.
That was overload.
2 more times. I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm going to need to take a break.
I have no idea how many times I've said on this. So
it's a lot, but we'll know when I do the show notes. Last time it was over 50.
No. So, what?
Yes.
For just me?
For just you. It was, in fact, for just you, it was 60 times last time.
You are kidding me.
And the time before that, it was 67. And the time before that, it was 52. Whereas I've been in single digits that whole time, although I caught myself doing it a couple times.
What a terrible habit.
I may be over 5. Oh, I know. We're awful.
I have. Oh, man. Okay. I'm going to have to figure something out.
It's funny because the show where we read that email, I had been concentrating on not doing it. I still did it like 16 times, and I would laugh every time I would do it. It's tough. It's tough to stop yourself, but I believe achievable. I've demonstrated it.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Anyway, we're gonna stop the reviews there. I don't know what to target for next time. I feel like we should try to do a significant period of time, not like hours played, but more like let's get to the end of July.
I see. Yeah, from like a calendar. Yeah, so it starts in January, right? Is that right?
Yes.
And yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. And then,
however we get there, whatever it takes, and we can, if it becomes a burden and we can't fit it in, then fine, and we can talk about that too.
See how I do. Yeah. I don't want to force this, but I think we do need to get to like at least 2 bases to see what it's like to. We don't have to maybe do that in this next session, but like that's I think going to be another sort of expansion of the systemic side of it, where you're kind of managing both things, because then you'd need spacecraft to be in both, and like so that's probably going to be another milestone where you're able to manage two bases at least. Because I assume down the road, man, I don't know, this is going to be a long game.
There's slots for like 7, I think, in the base menu.
7 bases. Oh, you're right. There is a finite number. Yeah, I was about to say that you're probably going to have one on every continent at least, but there is a limit. Yeah, you're right. Man, 7 bases. Wow. I'm a little, intimidated. But if we get there, and if it does end on Mars, where you go to their home base, that does sound very exciting.
It does. It does sound very exciting. I look forward to that. So we will do that for next time. In the meantime, you can shoot us email at devgameclub@gmail.com. As you hear every week, we love reading those emails and answering your questions, whatever they may be. And same with the reviews. We've slowed down on getting reviews lately. We'd love to have those start coming back. So thank you for that in advance. You can just go and look on your Apple Podcasts app for those. If there's an equivalent Android thing, please just send me email and tell me how to find them, because I don't have an Android device, so I have no idea. But in the meantime, you can also find the podcast at DevGameClub on Twitter. I am at Brett_Duville, and he is
at Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
And we hope none of you will be picked up by spaceships and probed this week. And we will talk to you, I guess, next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye.